The crystal inside was smaller than it should have been. She knew this. She knew it every time she opened the case. But knowledge and seeing were different things. And each time she looked at it, the smallness of it struck her the same way. A shortness of breath, a tightening across the back of her jaw. When she'd crystallized it 5 years ago, it had been the size of the last joint of her thumb. A proper extraction. Amber yellow and warm to the touch. Memory crystals lost mass as they degraded. Slowly, in stable conditions. Very slowly. But this one was losing more than mass. It was losing light. She carried it to the reading stand in the center of the vault and set the case open on the surface. The stand was a slim column of dark metal about waist height, its top inlaid with a shallow concave dish of translucent conductor material that interfaced with the crystal's resonance field and allowed the memory to be read without full playback. Without full playback meant without reliving. It meant she could see the shape of what was in it, the outline of the moment, without stepping inside. She did not trust herself to step inside. The crystal had been gold once. She was certain of this because she had watched it form, had watched the fluid in the crystallization chamber thicken and catch light and structure itself around the neural pattern she'd extracted, and the color that had come off it in the first moments of solidification had been the particular gold of late afternoon through amber glass. Warm, specific, alive. It was not that color now. Now it was the gold of something that has been left in the sun too long and faded toward colorlessness at the edges. The center still held some warmth. If she looked at it straight on, in the clean, cold light of the vault, she could see it there. A kernel of amber, smaller each time. The edges had gone pale, nearly translucent, and at the tips of the crystalline structure where the molecular density was lowest, the fading was almost complete. She set it in the concave dish of the reading stand. The stand's interface activated with a faint glow, a soft blue that was the equipment's own emission, not the crystal's. She watched the crystal sit in that light. It was still for a moment, and then, the way it always did, it caught. Some internal response to the conductor field, the thing that made it a memory and not just a mineral. A micropulse of resonance that moved through the crystal structure and made the light inside it breathe. In and out. Not quickly. Slowly, like something sleeping, she reached out and touched it with 2 fingertips. Warmth. Just barely. The way a stone holds heat from an afternoon sun, hours after dark, releasing it in such small increments that you have to hold still and let it accumulate in your skin to know it is there at all. She held still. She let it accumulate. Behind the warmth, at the very edge of what the reading stand's passive interface could offer without engaging full playback, came the shape of the memory. Not its content, not the details, just the emotional architecture of it. The way a piece of music heard through a wall gives you the key it is in and the tempo and the general feeling without the words or the melody. She could feel it the way she would have described as being very close to a fire that she could not see. A child's happiness. Specifically, the particular happiness of being unobserved and unself-conscious, which was different from all other kinds and recognizable in its texture. Loose-limbed and directionless. Happiness as a state, rather than a response to anything. She had learned to read emotional valences at this level, the diagnostic granularity of it. She was excellent at it. She used it to assess preservation quality and to counsel clients on what their crystals contained. She had never, in 5 years, used it to assess Siena's. She pressed her fingertips a fraction harder against the surface. The edge of the memory shifted under her touch. And what came back from the reading stand's quiet hum was something she did not have a clinical category for, which was the specific sensation of being the person this memory belonged to, not remembering herself, not her own past. This was the echo of another nervous system's joy. Her daughter's, 7 years old, caught in the act of being exactly and only herself in a moment she had never known was being recorded. Elira's throat closed. She had done this to her. She had taken this moment, Siena spinning in the lab's outer corridor while waiting for a routine scan to complete, her arms out, her head back, her mouth open in a laugh that had been loud enough to make a visiting colleague raise an eyebrow. She had taken that moment, distilled it, crystallized it, filed it in her private archive with the annotation Siena03 positive. And she had been so certain, so perfectly certain that she was preserving something precious. The crystal pulsed once, faintly, then dimmed. She felt the dimming as a physical thing. That sudden absence in her fingertips, like pressing on a bruise and then removing the pressure and feeling the blood return. The warmth that had been there was less now, measurably less. She was not imagining it. She pulled her fingers back and looked at the crystal. The amber kernel at the center was smaller than it had been 60 seconds ago. Not by much. Not in any way a camera would have captured or a scan would have flagged as significant. But she had spent 20 years learning to read crystals by hand, by instinct, by the particular quiet attention that no instrument could replicate. And she could see the boundary of the warm center had retreated. A millimeter, perhaps less, but retreat. Her diagnosis was formal in the clinical part of her mind, the part that kept working because it did not know how to stop. Grade 4 resonance decay. The crystal's molecular lattice was losing structural integrity at the outer strata, where the extraction had been thinnest, and the degradation was working inward. At the current rate, which was hard to calculate with precision because the rate itself was not constant but seemed to be accelerating, she estimated 4 months before the outer third was fully bleached. Then the inner decay would follow with less resistance, because the lattice weakened at the margins first, and the center could not hold without the margins. She had maybe 2 years before it was gone. Possibly less, given tonight's gravity fluctuations and what those kinds of vibrations did to crystal lattice stability when the protective field wasn't compensating properly. She would need to check the vault's field generator in the morning. She would need to check it now, actually, except that she could not move from this spot. She sat down. There was no chair near the reading stand. She sat on the floor of the vault, cross-legged, the way she used to sit when Siena was small, and Siena had insisted that the floor was the correct place to be, that furniture was for people who had forgotten how to be children. The cold of the floor came through her clothes, gradual and pervasive. She didn't try to block it. She looked at the crystal in its dish. In, then out. The slow breathing of the light inside it. Still moving. Still alive in whatever way a memory could be said to be alive. Which was the only question in demonology she had never wanted to answer. Because the answer would require her to locate her discipline on a specific side of a line she was not ready to stand on. Siena spinning. Arms out. Head back. She had been so careful. That was the thing she kept returning to. In the vault, in the years since, she had been so careful. Every extraction performed at the correct neural depth, every crystallization process run at optimal temperature, every storage parameter calibrated to the specifications she herself had helped establish as the field standard. She had been meticulous and controlled and systematic, and none of it had prevented the experiment 5 years ago, the one she could not think about directly, the one that lived at the center of everything, like a room she moved around rather than through. She had been careful with Siena's memories. She had not been careful with Siena. The distinction felt like a blade that had been in her long enough to be familiar, something she had stopped noticing until moments like this when its angle shifted and she felt it reach something new. She reached out and picked the crystal up, both hands, cradling it in her palms the way you'd carry something with liquid inside it, gently, with full attention to orientation. The warmth was there, smaller,
She sat in the cold, on the floor of the vault she'd built so she wouldn't have to look at the sky, and she held what was left of her daughter. And outside the vault's thick walls, Calora hummed its low, wrong note, and the gravity of Selu's hidden pull shifted by some immeasurable fraction. And the crystal breathed. In. Out. She could feel, for the first time clearly, that it was getting harder for the crystal to do even that. "2 years," she had said to herself, in the clinical voice. Possibly less. But clinical voices were for laboratories, and she was on the floor. She had to find more of Siena. Whatever had scattered in that experiment, whatever resonance had fractured and dispersed through the system, through the undercity, through the storm paths where crystals shed and fell and were picked up by people who did not know what they held. She had to find the pieces, because this piece was going, and the pieces were all that was left of her daughter's particular weight in the world. The sound of her laughter through a wall. The warmth that her body gave off when she was happy and didn't know anyone was watching. The cold of the floor had settled completely through her now. She was shivering, slightly. She didn't stand. She sat in the vault with the crystal in her hands and the amber at its center still burning, still hers. And she let herself understand what she was going to have to do.